Mr. Marquardt on the 6th, on the 75th anniversary of the bomb in Wendover. Tell us about your father.
Oh my gosh. Now, my father was an aircraft commander with the 393rd, which was part of the 509th. He participated in both atomic missions. He was a pilot of the number 3 aircraft over Hiroshima 75 years ago today. And his mission was to get photographic information of the bomb blast. And he flew the airplane number 91, which was later named Necessary Evil, for that mission. So he was looking at Hiroshima when the bomb went off.
Wow.
They were about 30 miles from it. For the Nagasaki mission, he flew the Enola Gay, and his assignment was weather reconnaissance over Kokura. Kokura was the primary target for the second bomb. And he had radioed back that it was clear, and 45 minutes later, approximately, Sweeney got there with the bomb, and it was clouded over and diverted to Nagasaki.
Unbelievable.
So Kokura would have been, if it had been clear, would have been the second, but Nagasaki ended up because of the weather conditions. He was born in a little town in Kentucky, raised in another little town in southern Illinois called Golconda, on the banks of the Ohio River. Graduated a class of 24 from his high school and went to college in Bloomington, Illinois Wesleyan University. In his senior year, he and some other guys, which was March of '41, decided they wanted to join the Army Air Corps. My dad said in his story that it was because he could make an extra $500 a year if he stayed in. So he got his wings October 31st, 1941 at Kelly Field, Texas, outside San Antonio. And through a series of events, ended up with the 393rd in Fairmont, Nebraska in late spring, early summer of '44. September of '44, the 393rd was ordered to Wendover. Well, my dad, of course, one of the pilots, ended up in Wendover.
Wendover, Utah, on the Nevada border, right?
Yeah, well,
People forget this is Utah.
Yeah, so then he was, 393rd became part of the 509, and he trained here. Operation
Alberta, right?
But that was one of the names. Project Alberta was, there's a friend of his named Harlow Russ that wrote a great book about his experiences. My dad was given a copy in Los Alamos many years ago for a reunion. I think it was 1995, the 50th anniversary. But then he met my mother in Salt Lake.
Uh-huh.
When they go into Salt Lake for R&R, and that was in November of '44. They got married in '45, the end of May, just before Dad went overseas. My mom told him, if you don't marry me now, I won't be here when you get back, George. So they got married May 3rd, first '45. He left June 11th with his crew B-10. He's the aircraft commander and pilot of that crew. And went to Tinian base in the northern and Marianas Islands. In 1989, I got to go with my dad on a trip sponsored by BBC and Arts and Entertainment Network to do a documentary. There was my dad, Dick Nelson, who was a radio operator on the Enola Gay, Chuck Sweeney, who was a CO of the 393rd and number 2 airplane at Hiroshima and dropped the bomb on Nagasaki. We had Don Albury, who was Sweeney's co-pilot, and then we had Fred Bach, Boxcar, Fred Bach's airplane.
Yeah, people forget that was the name of the number 2, right?
Yeah, he was.
Fat man.
Yeah, Fred Bach's airplane was used by Sweeney to drop the second bomb, and Bach used Sweeney's plane from the first mission, which is named the Great Artiste, to fly.
You know what's interesting about the great artiste? You know, that's today's Andy Warhol's birthday.
When my dad stayed in until he was part of the Bikini Project out of Roswell when the 509th came home from overseas. Then got out because he didn't like the politics in the Air Force that was raising its head there. People were out to get Tibbets. My dad didn't want any part of that.
Yeah, I talked to Tibbets out here before he passed. I talked to Jepson. I interviewed Jepson out here. You know, he's a Utah. He just cried when I talked to him. He was an old man then.
Morris?
Yeah.
Great guy.
Great guy.
Yeah,
He talked about the ticker tape parade, and he says, I want to know part of that. He says, that photograph. And he says, yeah, I just cried and kept my head down the whole time. He says, I want to know part of that. Really a fantastic guy. When they came home after they dropped the bomb, they had a parade in New York City for these guys, and they went through, and they didn't want it. You know, but
these guys didn't seek notoriety.
Well, they did this. They were following orders. They didn't make these choices.
Yeah.
You know, Truman and crew. You know, powers there be did this, not them.
No,
You know, they took the fall, but they didn't do it.
One of the training incidents that happened here while Dad was training was in February 1945. He was operations officer, and he flew a plane for Jim Price, who was one of the other aircraft commanders, and they went out training on a training flight. And on their way back, on coming in over Wendover, they were radioed that engine was on fire on the aircraft Dad was flying. So Jim Price told me the story about it. He says George made a turn to get us down as quickly as possible because they're afraid of the explosion. And he says, your dad made the turn and got us on the ground faster than anybody I've ever seen
Saved
do
him.
a B-29.
Nice.
And they were rolling down the runway, slowing down, and Dad ordered everybody out of the aircraft. Of course, there's the 4-foot hole in the belly where they were dropping. They were going pretty slow by then, but everybody got out. And Dad got out when it came to a stop, and it was on fire. And melted the engine. The engine was hanging down. Tibbets came up, and my dad, in his story, said he told him, boss, I'm sorry I burned up one of your aircraft. He said, that's okay, we got new ones coming. But I got a picture of that
Nice.
from Dave Ashworth, standing right behind you in that doorway.
Nice.
Dave Ashworth is the son of Commander Frederick Ashworth,
Yeah.
who was a weaponeer on number 2 mission. He was a Navy commander. And Dave was here for our reunion in 2015. You remember that?
Yeah, I was here.
Were you?
Of
Okay.
course. I never miss it.
And Dave came up to me and he says, you're Steve Marquardt. And I says, yeah. Told me who he was, and of course I knew the name. And he says, I got a picture of the aircraft your dad burned up out here.
Nice.
I says, you do? And he says, yeah. So he forwarded that picture to me, and I've got my dad's flight records, and on the picture it has the date, so I verified it with the flight records for February 1945, and the date that was on the picture, I think it was February 21st, going from memory here.
Yeah.
And so we got a picture of the fireman out standing in front of the aircraft, and the engine hanging vertically off the wing.
Nice.
Yeah, almost.
Well, it just showed you how important these events are for, you know, Warline is, the world's run by those who show up. If you hadn't showed up, if he hadn't showed up, unrecorded history, right? You know, so now we have it, you know, because that's the way the world works, right? You came, he came, I was here. Where was the media is what I want to know. Utah Media, KSL, was out here yesterday reporting on a UTA fire, and I talked to him. I says, well, you know, it happened at 5:15 here on the 5th. And they're like, what? Huh? Who? Used to be a big deal around here in the state of Utah.
Yeah.
Not anymore, huh?
What's that?
Well, people have forgotten, I guess, or ignore.
We want to keep the memory so we don't forget.
History's important. History matters.
You know, why we were there, what we were there for.
Well, and I appreciate your knowledge, you know, the whole thing, and it's very controversial to this day, but, you know, we need to record history.
Yeah.
And so you've carried it on. I thank you. Appreciate you for all. That's a wonderful interview about your dad. And, you know, I'll post it on YouTube, and you know, so the history's there. This is the 75th anniversary. It's an important historical day. You know, so I'm here. I'm always here.
All right, sorry, we look like
Yeah.
everybody else in the world right now. You don't know who we are.
Well, I blame so much of even COVID-19 on, you know, the Fukushima event. You know, there's a new book out on the, you know, the media's not reporting the collateral damage in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I'm like, well, what about Fukushima? It is 75 years later, you know. And, you know, you were out here when they presented the paper crane. I got to hold it. I've got leukemia. Don't you think that's a big story? My dad was, you know, nuked in the Nevada death site, died. He was a human lab rat, and, you know, but where was the Utah? Look at who's just showing up. Fox News.
Yeah.
Nice.
Interview Jim.
Well, Jim's done so much, and so have you, you know. Thanks for giving us that. I'd shake your hand, but that's...
Well, we did the elbow bump, right?
Well, thank you, and so we'll get a video of Jim being interviewed by Fox News. Stay tuned.